When I talk about people that are icons dedicated to advocacy for transforming our educational system, I always get the first name right. I start with Howard. And then I get the last names confused. I say Lee, Fuller, whatever, and sometimes use their names interchangeably. So I appreciate the fact that we had Howard Lee here today. So, and I did recently go to the Bayo conference last week and hear our speaker and the great conference that he put together. So seeing them both in the span of the week and hearing them both in the span of the week, I don't know that I'll ever get them confused again. Well, Dr. Howard Fuller is a distinguished professor of education and the founder and director of the Institute for the Transformation of Learning at Marquette University. Dr. Fuller also served as the superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools from 1991 to 1995. Dr. Fuller serves as the chair of the board of Bayo, the Black Alliance for Educational Options. He is also the chair of the board of CEO Leadership Academy in Milwaukee, a charter school which serves grades 9 through 12. In November of 2011, Forbes magazine recognized Dr. Fuller as one of the world's most powerful educators. Dr. Fuller also has roots in this region. In 1965 to 69, he worked in this region. He worked for Operation Breakthrough, which is in Durham, which is my home right now. He worked for the North Carolina Fund and the Foundation for Community Development. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Howard Fuller.
Thank you very much. Before I get started, I always have a commercial. So the first thing is I want to find out how many tweeters do I have in here. So all you tweeters, so my handle is Howard L. Fuller. So if you want to follow me, I'm in a contest with this friend of mine to see who can get the most followers. So I'm trying to crush this dude. You know, it's always interesting for me to come back to North Carolina. And today was particularly interesting, the last couple of days actually, because I'm writing a book. And there are I think about 11 or 12 books out there where there's some significant portion of the book that's about me or work that I've done. So I finally decided, since everybody else was talking about me, maybe I should tell my own story. And what was really interesting is I spent today over at the Wilson Library, University of Chapel Hill, and also at the Durham County Library, checking on, some facts, because I'm getting a little hazy about some of this stuff that happened. And it's really quite weird to read about yourself 30, 40 years ago and what people were calling back then. And I never knew that I was the most hated and dangerous black person in the state of North Carolina, but it was there in the paper, so it must be true. So when I come back, I always call my friends from Durham, because if you're really fortunate in your life, you cross paths like with some really phenomenal people. And I read this poem once about how there's some people that come into your life and they're like sort of footprints in the sand on a beach. They're just there for a minute and they wash away. But there are other people that you come into contact in your life and they stay in your heart and soul forever. And those folks sitting at that table right there from Durham, they stay in my heart and soul forever. And I really feel blessed that that God somehow connected us together back in the 1960s. The first time I came to North Carolina, it was May 3rd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1965. And a few days after I'd been here, I turned on Channel 5. And at that time, Jesse Helms he owned Channel 5. And he used to do an editorial. And he did this editorial on this particular day. He had a dude with him called Uncle Chub. And so Jesse Helms sat there, and Uncle Chub sat there with a hunting shirt, a rifle, a hunting dog by a fireplace. And they did an editorial on Martin Luther King. And that was my introduction to North Carolina. And so I'm back here today, all these years later, but I need to explain to you all why I'm here. And I want to explain to you all before I talk, I never got the memo on how to be politically correct. So I'm just warning you all ahead of time that, so there are two things that drive me as I go all around the country speaking. And the first thing is, I believe that our children are our most precious gift from God. And I believe that it is our responsibility, with God's guidance, to love them, to nurture them, to care for them, and to make sure that every single one of them is educated. The second thing is a black person. I have this image in my head that will never go away. And what it is that on February 1st, 1960, 4 students from A&T sit down at a lunch counter and demand to be served. And here we are in 2013. 4 young black people sit down at a lunch counter where they're welcome and can't read the menu. And I asked myself, how did we allow this to happen? How did we allow this to happen? And so you all have a conference that you say the theme is quality education for all. It's hard to argue with that idea. Yet the reality is, for so many children in this country, including North Carolina, quality education is at best a distant dream for them. And all of you all in this room tonight know, if you're honest, you know that for quality education to happen for our poorest children, it's going to require a fundamental, indeed a revolutionary change in the way that we go about educating kids in this country. And I hear a lot about change because I travel all over the place. In fact, I was just explaining, I haven't been home in 11 days. And I've been all over, I just got through demonstrating in front of the Supreme Court in Louisiana because an opportunity scholarship program was passed. And the teachers union went to court to try to get the program to be declared unconstitutional. And so I was proud to stand with over 250 parents demanding that they have choice for their children. So when I hear about change, I'm all for change. But I also want to know what kind of change. And I want to know in whose interest is the change going to be made. And over the years, I've come to the cynical conclusion that most of us want change as long as don't nothing change. And I believe that for poor children in this country, particularly poor children of color, they caught up in this talk but no action concept of change. For example, many of our leaders say they want to change the educational reality for these poor children, They say that in one breath, but then in the next breath, they want the unions and all of the protectors of the status quo to remain in power. In far too many places, the same people who led us on the race to the bottom now got the money to lead us on the race to the top. And so, as far as I'm concerned, there's never going to be any real change in North Carolina or anywhere else if you don't change the power relations that exist in these systems of education. Because those of you who really know that this ain't about our kids. This is about who controls that money. This is all about power. Our kids are talked about after we settle the power question. So I wonder how many of us who are part of the charter school movement truly believe in promoting a level of change that will actually make a difference for our children. And I want you all to know, I've been in this movement in the beginning. The first law was passed in 1991 in Minnesota. I was at the first national charter school conference. And my first question was, where are the black people at? The same question I'm asking all over the country now, and it's 20-some years later. And so, I mean, I'm clear that just because we gather in a room and call ourselves charter school people, that don't move me. What moves me is what's actually happening. Because people can say anything. In fact, a great African-American philosopher named Junebug Jabo Jones, y'all must have known it, he must have lived on your block. What he said was, Mr. Say ain't nothing, Mr. Do is the man. Because people come to these conferences and they talk all kinds of militant stuff in the conference. But then you go home and don't nothing change. And so if this charter school movement is going to mean something, it cannot be a movement that simply replaces the old system with a new system and find new ways to put adult interests before the interests of our children. If that's what this is, it means nothing. We did not create this movement so that individuals or companies could make money. We did not create this movement for people to be able to hire all of their family members and friends no matter what the level of their competence. We did not create this movement for caring, loving people to establish schools they are incapable of running. We did not create this movement to give people the opportunity to create new citadels of privilege for their children and deny access to poor kids or kids of color. We did not create this movement for those of you to leave the traditional system and bring the same mentality and the same practices to the charter school. And let me be clear, and I took some heat the other day for this, but it's all good. I don't oppose for-profit companies. I made the statement that to me, labels don't mean anything. What means something to me is what you actually do. Because nonprofits rip off people just like for-profits do. And I always find these people, I hate for-profits, and you work for a nonprofit, and the only reason you work there is because a for-profit company made money to donate money to the nonprofit that you work for. And so to me, just because you say you're a nonprofit, that don't move me. If you like ripping it off, ripping our kids off, and you're doing it under the rubric of a nonprofit, why is that okay? But at the same time, anybody who makes a decision, where the reason why you make the decision is to enhance your bottom line, instead of educating our children, then you're not what this movement is supposed to be about. And I think great schools run by family members is wonderful. But if the family members are hired because they're family members and not because they got any skills, that's a distortion of what this movement is all about. This ain't no employment agency thing. We didn't start this for y'all to get employed unless you can educate kids. You need people who are caring and loving. Who wants people to be with our kids who are not caring and loving? This is a book I read by Marianne Williamson called Return to Love. And the interesting thing about this book is she was talking about the fable of the frog and the princess. And she was talking about how the princess kissed the frog and turned the frog into a prince. And she said what this fable is about, really, is the miraculous power of love to create the conditions for transformation. Because if you don't love people, you cannot understand them. If you don't understand them, you cannot reach them. And if you cannot reach them, you sure as H can't teach them. And so, you know, so I gave this big speech one night in Philadelphia. Lady came up to me afterwards, are you trying to tell me that I need to love these kids like I do my husband, my wife, you know, my significant other? I said, first of all, I don't know you. I don't know how you love your husband and your wife. So I can't answer that question. But I'm not talking about romantic love in any event. I'm talking about agape. I'm talking about unredeeming love, expecting nothing in return. That's a different form of love. And what I'm trying to say to you is that in order to have a great school, it is necessary for you to love our kids, but it is not sufficient. Because some of y'all who love our kids don't have no business trying to teach them. No, I mean that. I mean, you're great people, you love people, I'm sure everybody love you, but all of y'all you're not a good teacher. I mean, I believe this chartering process is an important part of parent choice. But I got in trouble down in New Orleans because, you know, I spoke at their charter school thing, and I got up and said, you know what, I oppose selective charter schools. Charter schools are public schools. You're supposed to serve everybody. You should not be able to, they got select charter schools in New Orleans. Okay? And so they was mad at me, and I haven't been invited back to that charter school, but that's okay. Because to me, this movement is about giving kids who need us the most the justice that has eluded them in the current system. This is about justice. This is about social justice. And I'm pleased to see good educators come from the traditional system. But the purpose of your coming should be a passion for your kids, not just a change of venue. And if you change the venue, and what you come with is the same baggage, the same, attitude about the kids, won't you stay where you at? I mean, why bring that to our children? When I was superintendent, and some of people know this, but they had to change the state law for me to be the superintendent because I had never been a teacher or a principal. So they changed the state law in Wisconsin so I could become the superintendent of the Milwaukee Public Schools. So at the first, you know, when all the new teachers come in, I got up and I said, hey, you know what? All of y'all in here who hate kids, raise your hand. And so I know they said, where they get this fool from? You know, he's the superintendent. But I was serious. I'm telling you the truth. I had organized a group of people to help folks with their resume. And I told them, any of y'all in here who hate kids, I'll help you get your resume together because you're probably wonderful people, but you don't want to go in here destroying my kids. And to show you how much I love you, I got somebody out here who will help you put your resume together to help you get a job that you need to have, but teaching kids ain't one. So I want y'all to be clear that for me, This is all about these kids. And so if you for quality education for all, and you're part of the charter school movement, if folks come to you and say children cannot learn because they come from dysfunctional families, what you're going to tell them is, you may not be able to do it at your school, but we can do it at ours. So, because I'm telling you, if I can take you to one school in America where these so-called dysfunctional kids are being taught, then nobody can say they cannot be done. What you can say is, you ain't doing it. But you can't say it can't be done, because it is being done. It's being done every day in America. And then, if you're for quality education for all, then when they say it's the responsibility of the parents to educate their children, you will say that we think that that's the job of the school. Now, people get mad at me when I say that. All your parents supposed to educate their kids. Then why y'all getting paid? If the parents supposed to be educating the kids, why don't we shut all y'all down and give the money to the parents? I'm serious. And I had people tell me, well, I could do a better job if I had better kids. And I'm sort of slow learning. It took me a little while to get that. But I finally understood it because I realized that the parents have sent us their worst kids to see how we do with them. And if we do a good job with them, help is on the way. Because they don't then send us their good kids. The reality is these parents send us the only kids that they have. And those of us who took on this movement, you cannot teach kids that used to be there. Kids you wish were there. You got to teach kids who are actually there. And we started this movement because we said that we can do this. You can't now start talking about, because I go to these charter school conferences, and I'm hearing some of the same stuff I used to hear from the traditional system. Oh, these kids, all these families, blah, 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 blah. We started this movement because we said we wanted to take on the challenge of educating our kids. If you're not up to the challenge, send them back. One of the things I've learned over time and over my life is that you have to be committed to purpose, not to the way to get to purpose. So that the purpose is to educate children. If you get committed to charter schools, and charter schools are not working, then you're making a mistake. Because what you're going to become is the new protector of the status quo. See, because your school is only valuable if it's valuable. And it's only valuable if it's educating kids. But see, once we set up these institutions, then what we start doing is developing all the ways to protect the institutions. And what we do is we lose sight of the purpose for the creation of the institutions. And so if we really believe in quality education for all, then we believe that the reason why we exist is to educate kids. And what we will also believe is that in America, race matters and class matters. Let me repeat that. Race matters and class matters. I hear all the young people who talk to me, told me we're in a post-racial America. I have no idea what that is. I know it means something. I don't know exactly what it means, because my kids that I have in our school, race matters. Race has an impact on their life chances. But you know what happens is, many times we come up with a racial solution to something that is a class problem. Because so many people of color are disproportionately poor that we think the solution is doing something about race when actually the solution is doing something about class. See, because money matters in America. The only people tell you money don't matter in America got money. Don't nobody who's poor in America talk about how cool it is to be rolling around in America broke. Money matters. And some of you all have kids who ought to get a medal just for showing up at school. Given what they're going through to get there, most of y'all couldn't survive in those circumstances for a day. And so even though people say we got to have no excuses, we do have to have no excuses, but no excuses is not the same as not recognizing the reality of what kids are dealing with. It means something if you're living in a car. We got kids who are staying in cars. And so you think they can just come to school and just be ready to learn? Can you sleep in a car and come to school ready to teach? And so there's a difference between recognizing and using that as an excuse. You recognize it, and what do? You change the way your school operates to deal with the reality of what they're bringing to you. You can't just keep things the way they were because that's what we do. Yeah, well, what about these kids? What about trying to understand what they're going through? And I'm not asking you because I would never change the fundamentals. But what I'm saying is we got to recognize the reality of what these kids are dealing with. This is a very different generation of children. I usually bring kids with me, because I like to take my kids, I take my kids to San Francisco. I always take a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and a senior. And when you go to San Francisco with me, you gotta go to Chinatown, and we're gonna have dinner. And you can't order the same sweet and sour stuff that you order from the Chinese place back home on the corner. And you sure can't order no hamburger. And then we're gonna go walk on the Golden Gate Bridge. And you're going to Stanford and you're going to UC Berkeley. You know why? Because I want you to go on a college campus and I want you to see people who go to those colleges because they intend to run the world. And what they intend to do is give you orders. So what do you want to be? You want to be somebody who's going to run the world, or do you want to take orders from these people who are in this school right here? Because you see that building that say Hewlett and Packard? That means something. Hewlett Packard. What is that? HP. HP, what's that? Laptop. These people went to Stanford. You know what I mean? It's like you got to get these kids to see a world that is different than their block. Because their conception of what's possible is limited. And I want all of you all to understand that I understand how difficult it is to create a great school. I chair the board of a school that is not a great school. And I run around the country talking all the time. But we are trying to become a great school. Because I believe in the idea of tell no lies and claim no easy victories. Because a lot of people are lying out here about the progress of their kids. We cook in the books so that we look good. And when you do that, you're destroying our kids. Because what you're doing is you're telling a lie about what they know. And at some point, the fact they don't know is going to hurt them. Because they're going to go somewhere, talk about something they think is right because you didn't tell them it wasn't right, and they're going to get corrected. Because y'all talk about self-esteem. You want to help somebody's self-esteem? Teach them how to read. Teach them how to write. You in a self-esteem class? I don't need no self-esteem class. If I know how to read, write, think, analyze, and compute, what do I need with a self-esteem class? Because I'm going to know how to solve problems. I'm going to know how to function. And so what we got to understand is, I read this book, The World is Flat, by Thomas Friedman. It's the scariest book I ever read until I read their new book, That Used to Be Us. But you know how it is when these politicians, the black ones and the white ones, roll up in your church, for election. These bushy Negroes, yeah, I said it, they come rolling up in church. And they all get up there, and now they get up there, and first thing they say is, it take a whole village. First of all, y'all ain't never been to the village. Couldn't find village with MapQuest. Come up here and come out and take a whole village. So I'm tired of that, okay? So I'm gonna give y'all a new parable that I got out of Thomas Friedman's book. So next time somebody starts talking about the village, hold up your hands. Oh, so Fuller gave us a new parable. So this is one I want you to think about. Every day in Africa, a gazelle gets up. And the gazelle knows that if it can't run faster than the fastest lion, it's going to get killed. A lion gets up, knowing that if it can't run faster than the slowest gazelle, it's going to starve. Either way, when the sun comes up, they both start running. And what's happening is, all over the world, young people are getting up when the sun comes up. And these young people all over the world are running faster than our best young people. And if they're running faster than our best young people, what chance are our kids going to have who can't read, can't write, can't think, can't compute? No chance. And I tell my kids all the time, you know what? Getting an education in America guarantees you nothing. But I will guarantee you, you will have nothing without an education. And I tell these young ladies, like you think you're cute. Two things. First of all, you're as cute as you think you are. And number two, it ain't gonna last forever. I'm just saying, I know everybody thinking like, I'm just saying. And the point I'm trying to make is, it's about what's up here, right? This is what they can't take away. And this is what's going to determine where you go in life. Because the world that you live in is flat. You're not just going to be competing with people from Greensboro, from New York. You're going to be competing with people from all over the world. I mean, it's like right now, when you pick up your phone, you got something wrong with your phone, you call, person pick up the phone, you think you're talking to Bob from Des Moines. You're actually talking to Rajiv from Bangalore, India. No, I'm serious. They got over 200,000 people who don't do nothing but answer the phone in India. And you think you're talking to Bob over in Des Moines somewhere, because the dudes sound like Bob. Because they train them sound like Bob, man. No, this is, I mean, I'm trying to lay this out to you, but this is huge. This is huge. Because I'm trying to get you all to understand that this conference, these schools, this is everything. And our kids today, like at our school, like, there's nothing worse than expelling a kid. But you know what? In our school, ain't no 15-year-old gonna rise up and call one of our teachers a bitch. That's not happening. If you gotta do that, you got to go. I mean, because Because at some point, you got to understand that there are consequences out here. That we got a small school. We can barely pay our teachers. I ain't hiring no safety aides. If it takes safety aides and guards and all of that, we don't need no school. So if y'all got to fight, then we can't have a school. Because if you fight in our school, you're gone. People say, oh, no, you can't do that. Yes, you can. You know why? Because at a certain point in time, our kids have got to understand that either you are going to be what they say you are, or you're going to be something different. And this is hard, right? I mean, but because you don't want to get rid of kids. You want to keep kids. But you can't let one knucklehead ruin things for a whole bunch of kids. This is hard. And we got to create all kinds of different ways to work with kids. But I tell our kids, we working hard, but you got to work hard too. This ain't just, we going to work hard and you just sitting there chilling. If we're going to make a difference, we have to change the way we're educating kids. Kids have got to understand they got to work harder. We all got to work harder. Because every Black History Month, I teach at our school. Because I believe anybody who runs around the country talking about education, you ought to at least see a kid every now and then. So I teach for a week. And I'll tell you, after the first day, I'm dying. Nobody understands how hard teachers, y'all don't get paid nearly enough. I'm serious. I mean, because if you really teach like a champion, like that book that this dude wrote, Teach Like a Champion, he's got those 40 things in there that talks about the way to reach kids. If you teach like a champion, at the end of the day, you're exhausted. I mean, let's be real. I mean, because you're dealing with so much. And so, you know, I taught on Monday, and I was like, is it only Monday? You sure there ain't Friday? Did I come up in here and miss 3 or 4 days? Or what? You know, what happened up in here? But what I'm trying to get across to you is, but that's what it's going to take. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we got to have people with these kids who are going to deal with these kids at that level. But you know what else we're going to have to do? We're getting ready to turn our school into a blended school. And I'll explain why. There's this article that a dude wrote many years ago. It's called Digital Natives and Digital Immigrants. And a lot of people my age are digital immigrants. We're the kind of people who call you up to say, did you get my email? You know, like, I got some witnesses. I mean, you're like, you know, we're the ones who, when they send a doc to us to, you know, to look at it, you know, and correct it, we print it out, make the corrections on the paper, then go back in and try to correct it on the computer. You know what I'm saying? We're the ones that if you come across a cool, you know, URL, like, hey, come over here and see this, instead of just sending it to them. You know, so, but our kids are digital natives. I mean, I got a grandson, he's 3. And I had to give this dude my iPad, because at 3, I ain't even talking about my granddaughter Zoe at 6, she's beyond any of this, right? Because, but he looks at my phone, and you know, you got that little, you know, you have this monkey thing on there, you know, this kids game, so he know how to go, and you're like, monkey, you just start getting a monkey. So I just gave him my iPad, because he just took it over. Now, here's what I'm trying to say is, I'm an Apple person. If you go to an Apple store, most Apple stores will have like a round table and bean bags. In front of each bean bag, there's a computer. And almost invariably when you go in there, these little kids are on the computer with the mouse. Now, if you think that these little kids are going to sit up in these classrooms with these evenly spaced rows and chairs and listen to you pontificate for 7 8 hours, you are crazy. You have no understanding how the brain works. These kids right now, the way that they get information, their brains are being changed. And if your teaching method don't change, they don't have attention deficit disorder. They bored. No, I'm serious. You have bored them to death. And you know, I had a teacher tell me, you know, Howard, I just did the best job I've ever done of teaching, and the kids didn't get it. I'm like, hello. There's actually a connection between you doing the most phenomenal job you've ever done as a teacher and the kids getting it. But you know why we got to go to blended schooling? It's because we got to individualize learning. Because all of you all know that in a classroom, if you got 20 kids and you got 5 of them that are really way behind, you got 5 of them that are way ahead, who gonna get educated? The 10 in the middle. And these kids who are outliers, you're not gonna get to them. And so we gotta begin to understand how to use online technology, how to use platforms like E2020, whichever ones. You know, look at what you can do with Khan Academy. Look at what you can do with Dreambox. Hey, we just had a symposium, and we got a relationship with Apple. We had an iPad demonstration at our symposium. They dissected a frog on the iPad. And so what I'm trying to tell you all is, we have got to think differently about the whole education enterprise. And those of us who are older and all of that, we're going to have to learn something new. Because I don't believe this stuff about you can't teach old dog. No, I never believe that. You can learn anything if you want to learn. And that any of y'all who done already said, I'm an old dog and I can't be taught no, well, you should go lay down somewhere. No, I'm serious. You need to go lay down and let somebody put a cover over you and take care of you, but you need to get away from our kids. Because we need people who are open to learning, who are willing to learn new things, use new tools of learning. Because that's what our kids gonna need. That's what they're competing with. And a lot of these like really hoxy-toxy private schools that cost $20,000, everybody got an iPad. And when our kids finally like meet them in the marketplace of ideas, they're gonna be so far behind where the rest of the world is. So, I don't know. I just think that this is the best of times and the worst of times. And that those of you who are out here talking about you're part of the charter school movement, we can't be the same as the place that we just escaped from. What's the purpose? What does it mean if we're not going to be any different? If we're not going to be taking risks for our kids? If we're not going to be trying to create environments that are exciting for kids, environments that teach kids, environments that care about these kids, then why bother? So this is what I want you all to think about. And so I just want to leave you with something Martin Luther King said. He said that, and it's really interesting, he said that we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is the day. And we're confronted with the fierce urgency of now. And in this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. And over the bleached bones and jumbled residue of numerous civilizations are written the pathetic words, too late. And so the question becomes, when people write the history of the charter school movement, are they going to write too little, too late. Because you know what? We got to have a sense of urgency. I mean, our kids, our children are in the deepest trouble that I have ever seen in my life. I mean, our kids are killing each other. I mean, the streets of Chicago. I mean, our kids are on doing all kinds of drugs. Because what's happening is we've lost a lot of these kids. And you all know that kids are still kids. They want somebody at some point to tell them what's right and what's wrong. They want some direction. They want somebody to care about them, but someone who shows them the way. That's what we can do in this room. That's why we created this movement, was to change the trajectory of education in America. That's why we did this. That's why you in this room, to change the trajectory of education for our children in America today. Because we do not want history to be written, and over the charter school movement, too little, too late. Thank you very much.